My name is Gil Tatum, and I'm a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service. I guess I'm recording this so that there's some kind of a record for the strange happenings that I've encountered throughout my career in the Forestry Service. We don't tell people. We keep it very hush-hush. I have a pretty good track record for finding missing people. Most of the time, they just wander off the path or slip down a small cliff, and they can't find their way back. The majority of them have heard the old stay where you are and don't move a damn muscle adage, and they don't wander far, or at all. But I've had two cases where that didn't happen. Both bother me a lot, and I use them as motivation to search even harder on the missing person cases I do get called out on. The first was a little boy who was out berry picking with his parents. He and his sister were together, and both of them went missing around the same time. Their parents lost sight of them for a few seconds, and just like that, in that time frame, both the kids just apparently wandered off. When their parents finally couldn't find them, they called us, and we came out to search the area. We found the daughter pretty quickly, and when we asked where her brother was, she told us that he'd been taken away by the bear man. She said he gave her some berries and told her to stay quiet, and that he wanted to play with her brother for a little while. The last she ever saw of her brother, he was riding on the shoulders of the bear man, and he seemed calm. Of course, our first thought was abduction, but we never found a single trace of another human being in the area. The little girl was also insistent that he wasn't a normal man, but when he was tall and covered in hair like a bear, and that he had a weird face. We searched that area, high and low, for weeks. It was one of the longest calls I've ever been on, but we never found a single trace of that damn kid. The other was a young woman who was out hiking with her mother and grandfather. According to the mother, her daughter had climbed up a tree to get a better view of the forest, and she'd never come back down. They waited at the base of the tree for hours, calling her name, asking for help from passing hikers, before they finally called us. Again, we searched the area and we found nothing, not a trace of her. I have no idea where she could have possibly gone, because neither her mother nor grandfather saw her come down. A few times I've been out on my own searching with a canine, and they've tried to lead me up straight cliffs. Not hills, not even rock faces, straight, sheer cliffs with no possible handholds. It's always baffling, and in those cases, we usually find the person on the other side of the cliff or miles away from where the canine had led us. I'm sure there's an explanation, but it's goddamn strange. One particularly sad case that I've worked on required the recovery of a body. A 9-year-old girl had fallen down an embankment and got impaled on a dead tree at the base. It was a complete freak accident, but I'll never forget the sound her mother made when we told her what had happened. She saw the body being loaded into the ambulance, and she let out the most haunting, heartbroken wail I've ever heard. It was like her whole life was crashing down around her, and a part of her had died with her daughter. I heard from another SAR officer that she killed herself a few weeks after it happened. She just couldn't live with the loss of her daughter. There was another time I was teamed up with another SAR officer because we'd received reports of bears in the area. We were looking for a guy who hadn't come home from a climbing trip when he was supposed to. We ended up having to do some serious climbing to get to where we figured he'd be, and we found him trapped in a small crevasse with a broken leg. It was not pleasant. He'd been there for almost 2 days, and his leg was very obviously infected. We were able to get him into a chopper, and I heard from one of the EMTs that the guy was absolutely inconsolable. He kept on talking about how he'd been doing fine, and when he'd finally gotten to the top, a man was there. He said the guy had no climbing equipment, and he was wearing a parka and ski pants. He walked up to the guy, and when the guy turned around, he said he had no face. Nothing. It was just blank. He freaked out and ended up trying to get off the mountain too fast, which is why he'd fallen. He said he could hear the guy all night climbing down the mountain and letting out these horrible, muffled screams. The story bothered the hell out of me. I'm glad I wasn't there to hear it. One of the scariest things I've ever had happen to me involved the search for a young woman who'd gotten separated from her hiking group. We were out until late at night because the dogs had picked up her scent. When we finally found her, she was curled up under a large rotted log. She was missing her shoes and pack, and she was clearly in shock. She didn't have any physical injuries, and we were able to get her to walk with us back to base ops. Along the way, she kept looking behind us and asking us why the big man with black eyes was following us. We couldn't see anyone, so we just wrote it off as some weird symptom of shock. But the closer we got to base, the more agitated this woman got. She kept asking me to tell him to stop making faces at her. At one point, she stopped and turned around and began screaming into the forest, saying things like she wouldn't leave with him, and he needed to leave her alone, and she wasn't going to give us to him. We finally got her to keep moving, but we started hearing these strange noises coming from all around us. It was almost like coughing, but more rhythmic and deeper. It was almost insect-like. I don't really know how else to describe it. When we were within sight of base ops, the woman turns to me and her eyes are about as wide as I can imagine a human could open them. She touches my shoulder and says, "He says to tell you to speed up. He doesn't like looking at the scar on your neck." Now, I have a very small scar on the base of my neck, but it is completely hidden under my collar, and I have no idea how this woman saw it. Right after she says it, I hear that weird coughing right in my ear, and I just about jumped out of my skin. I hustled at her ops, trying not to show how freaked out I was, but I have to say, I was really happy when we left that area that night. This is the last one I'm going to record today, and it's probably the weirdest story I have. Now, I don't know if this is true in every SAR unit, but in mine, it's sort of an unspoken regular thing we run into. You can try asking about it with other SARs, but even if they know what you're talking about, they probably won't say anything about it. We've been told not to talk about it by our supervisors at this point. We've all gotten so used to it that it doesn't seem weird anymore. On just about every case we're really far into the wilderness, I'm talking 30 or 40 miles, at some point we'll find a staircase in the middle of the woods. Just a staircase. It's almost like if you took the stairs in your home, cut them out, and put them in the woods. I asked about it the first time I saw some, and the other officer just told me not to worry about it, that it was normal. Everyone I asked said the same thing. I wanted to go check them out, but I was told very empathetically that I should never go near any of them, and I just sort of ignore them now when I run into them because it happens so frequently. Huh.